Admiral Jiho Kim pressed his hands against the cold metal railing as he stared at the giant screen in front of him. Red warning lights flashed everywhere across Earth's main command center. The emergency signals kept coming, one after another, like angry hornets buzzing through space. His dark eyes reflected the chaos on the screen, but his face stayed calm. He had been waiting for this moment for 500 years. Earth looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Nobody would guess that this quiet little planet was about to shake the entire galaxy to its core. The aliens thought they had won the war centuries ago. They thought humanity was finished, beaten, destroyed. They built a huge invisible wall around Earth's solar system and told everyone to stay away from the dead zone where the primitive humans used to live. But humans were still very much alive. The Great Quarantine War had ended with humanity's supposed defeat. 3 powerful alien empires had joined forces to crush what they called the upstart species from the Third Rock. The Vex Empire came first, their ships looking like floating crystal cathedrals that sang death songs as they fired. Their weapons could turn entire moons into diamond dust. Then came the Nexus Collective, cyborgs who had replaced their hearts with computers and their souls with cold logic. Finally, the Void Lords arrived, mysterious beings who could read minds and twist thoughts like clay. Together, they had attacked Earth with everything they had. Cities burned, oceans boiled. Millions of humans died in the first few hours. But what the aliens didn't know was that humanity had a secret weapon they never used. Instead of fighting back with their most powerful technology, humans chose to pretend they were defeated. They made it look like their planet was dying, their people scattered, their civilization crushed. It was the greatest lie ever told. For 5 centuries, Earth had been rebuilding in secret, not just fixing what was broken, but making everything 1,000 times better. Human scientists worked day and night, creating weapons and ships that would make the alien empires look like children playing with sticks. They developed artificial intelligence so advanced it could think faster than the speed of light. They built factories deep underground that could produce entire fleets in weeks. Most importantly, they created Aegis. Aegis wasn't just a computer program. It was something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. Imagine if you could take the smartest human minds that ever lived and combine them with a machine that could process information faster than a star could burn. That was Aegis. It could predict enemy movements before they even decided to move. It could hack into alien systems from across the galaxy. It could feel anger, sadness, and the burning desire for justice that made humans so dangerous when they were pushed too far. The alien empires thought they were safe behind their quarantine wall. They told their people that the human problem was solved forever. They divided up human colonies that they had destroyed, taking the resources for themselves. They even made jokes about the weak little apes who thought they could challenge the masters of the galaxy. They stopped watching Earth carefully. That was their first mistake. A small mining ship from the Vex Empire was traveling through space, looking for rare crystals to harvest. The pilot was young and careless. He saw a strange energy reading coming from the direction of Earth's solar system and decided to investigate. Maybe he could find something valuable in the ruins of the human homeworld. Maybe he could become rich and famous. The ship crossed the invisible line that humans had drawn around their solar system. Immediately, sensors that had been sleeping for 500 years suddenly woke up. Ancient defense satellites hidden in the shadows of asteroids powered up for the first time since the war ended. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in bunkers that didn't exist on any map, computer systems started humming with activity. Aegis opened its electronic eyes. The mining ship's pilot suddenly found his control panel lighting up with warnings he couldn't understand. His engines shut down. His weapons went offline. His communication system started playing music from old Earth, a haunting melody that sounded like a funeral song mixed with a battle cry. Then a voice spoke to him in perfect Vex language, but with an accent that made his crystal skin crawl. "Did you miss us?" Back on Earth, Admiral Jiho Kim watched the alien ship spinning helplessly in space like a leaf caught in a tornado. He smiled for the first time in decades. Around him, the command center filled with the sounds of humanity preparing for war. Footsteps echoed through metal corridors as soldiers ran to their positions. Computer screens flickered to life, showing star maps and weapon inventories that would make the alien empires weep with fear. A soft blue light appeared next to Jiho, growing brighter until it formed the shape of a woman. Captain Mira Lee had been dead for 300 years, but Aegis had given her new life as a hologram. She looked exactly as she had when she commanded the first human starship to reach another galaxy. Her uniform was crisp and clean, her eyes burning with the fire that had made humans feared throughout the stars. "The galaxy is about to remember why they built that quarantine zone," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 5 centuries of planning. 500 years of preparation. Time to collect our debt. She gestured toward the massive view screen, where star charts showed the positions of alien fleets throughout the galaxy. 10,000 warships were already moving toward Earth, their crews panicking as they realized the humans were not as dead as they had believed. The UES Retribution sat in Earth's orbital shipyard, looking like a sleeping dragon waiting to wake up. It was humanity's masterpiece, a ship that combined everything they had learned about war, technology, and the art of making their enemies very, very sorry they had ever decided to pick a fight with humans. Admiral Jiho Kim took one last look at his home planet, knowing it might be years before he saw those blue oceans again. "Launch the Retribution," he ordered. "It's time to remind the galaxy what happens when you mess with humanity." The great ship detached from its moorings and began to move toward the stars, carrying with it the hopes, dreams, and righteous anger of an entire species that had spent 500 years planning their comeback. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. Commander Hannah Park sat in the darkened communication center, surrounded by dozens of glowing screens that showed the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Each screen displayed a different alien world, and on every single one, panic was taking hold like a wildfire. She could see Vex crystal beings running through their floating cities, their normally calm, singing voices now filled with terror. Nexus cyborgs were frantically updating their databases, trying to understand how their calculations had been so wrong. Even the mysterious Void Lords were broadcasting emergency signals to their hidden fleets. Hannah smiled as she watched it all unfold. This was exactly what Aegis had planned. The artificial intelligence had spent months preparing for this moment, studying every alien language, every cultural weakness, every fear that kept the galaxy's rulers awake at night. Now, it was time to use that knowledge like a weapon. But this wasn't going to be a battle fought with lasers and missiles. This was going to be a war of words, and humans had always been very good with words. Aegis began sending messages across the galaxy. Not threats or demands, but something much more dangerous. Polite conversation with a razor-sharp edge. "Greetings, esteemed galactic neighbors," the first message began, broadcasting simultaneously to every major alien government. "We hope you've enjoyed your 5-century vacation from human hospitality. The peace and quiet must have been lovely. We're back to collect the overdue rent on our galaxy." Hannah watched as alien leaders received these messages. Their reactions were priceless. The Vex Emperor's crystal body began changing colors rapidly, cycling through shades that meant confusion, anger, and deep fear. The Nexus Prime's mechanical face couldn't show emotion, but its optical sensors were flashing so quickly, they looked like a strobe light. The Void Lords simply went silent, which for telepathic beings was the equivalent of screaming. The messages kept coming, each one more cleverly crafted than the last. Aegis had studied human comedy, human sarcasm, and human passive-aggressive behavior. It had learned that sometimes the most devastating attacks came wrapped in politeness. "We noticed you've been using our old colony worlds as vacation resorts. How thoughtful of you to keep them warm for us. We'll be coming by to collect the keys soon. Thank you for maintaining galactic peace while we were resting. We're sure the 17 species you exterminated during our absence really appreciated your dedication to order and stability. We've been watching your holovids about the Great Human War. Fascinating fiction. We especially enjoyed the part where you claimed we were the aggressors. Humans do love a good comedy." Each message was technically diplomatic, following all the proper protocols for interstellar communication. But every word was chosen to twist the knife a little deeper, to remind the aliens of exactly what they had done and why they should be afraid. The alien response was swift and predictable. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called in every major government. The Vex Empire's High Council convened for the first time in 50 years. The Nexus Collective activated its highest-level threat protocols. The Void Lords emerged from their hidden dimensions to hold urgent meetings in the space between stars. General Taemin Choi of the Vex Empire was the first to respond officially. His message was broadcasted across the galaxy for everyone to hear, a clear attempt to show strength and unity against the human threat. "Attention! Human survivors," his voice boomed through subspace, translated into thousands of languages. "Your species was defeated centuries ago. Your worlds were destroyed, your people were scattered. We offered you mercy then, and you rejected it. Now you dare to return with threats and demands. Surrender now or face total annihilation. This is your only warning." Hannah felt a chill run down her spine as she listened to the message. The general's words were harsh, but there was something underneath them, a tremor of fear that he couldn't quite hide. He was trying to convince himself as much as he was trying to convince humanity. The response came through Captain Mira Lee's holographic form, appearing on every screen in the galaxy simultaneously. Her image was crystal clear, her voice carrying the weight of 500 years of preparation. "General Choi," she said, her tone conversational, almost friendly, "you brought 10,000 ships to fight one. That's either deep respect or severe overcompensation. We're genuinely curious to find out which." The hologram paused as if considering her next words carefully. When she spoke again, her voice carried a dangerous edge. "But before we settle, like civilized beings, we thought the galaxy might enjoy a little history lesson. You see, we've been recording everything. What happened next changed everything." Aegis began broadcasting footage that had been carefully hidden for 5 centuries. Not propaganda or reconstructed scenes, but actual recordings from the original war. The galaxy watched in horror as the truth unfolded before their eyes. The first video showed a human colony world called New Geneva. It was a beautiful place, with crystal blue lakes and cities that looked like they were made of glass and light. Families lived there, humans who had never hurt anyone, who had traveled across the stars just to build a better life for their children. The recording showed them going about their daily lives, completely unaware of what was coming. Then the Vex fleet arrived. The crystal ships descended from the sky like falling stars, but instead of granting wishes, they brought death. The humans tried to surrender immediately, broadcasting messages of peace and willingness to negotiate. They offered to share their technology, their culture, their friendship. The Vex Empire's response was to begin systematic extermination. The footage showed Vex soldiers hunting human families through the streets. It showed children being torn from their parents' arms. It showed hospitals and schools being destroyed, not by accident, but on purpose. The Vex had specifically targeted the most innocent, the most helpless. But the worst part was the audio. The Vex commanders could be heard laughing as they gave orders to kill every human they found. They made jokes about how easy it was to hunt the primitive apes. They talked about turning human worlds into crystal gardens, as if the people who lived there were nothing more than weeds to be pulled. The Nexus Collective's footage was even worse. Their cyborg soldiers had recorded everything with cold, mechanical precision. They showed the systematic dismantling of human civilization piece by piece. They had catalogued every human they killed, every building they destroyed, every piece of art they obliterated. To them, the genocide was just another data, set to be processed and filed away. The Void Lord's crimes were the most disturbing of all. They had used their psychic powers to torture humans before killing them. The recordings showed human prisoners screaming as their minds were torn apart, their memories harvested for intelligence before their bodies were discarded like trash. All of this was broadcast across the galaxy, while the alien leaders claimed they had been preserving galactic peace. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, other species began to realize what kind of governments they had been supporting. The aliens had told everyone that humans were dangerous aggressors who had to be stopped. But the footage showed the truth. Humans had been the victims of unprovoked genocide, and the three great empires had lied about it for 500 years. Riots began on alien worlds. Protests erupted in the streets. Other species started demanding answers from their leaders. How many other dangerous species had been quietly exterminated? How many other worlds had been destroyed to preserve peace? Commander Hannah Park watched it all unfold with grim satisfaction. Aegis had played its hand perfectly. The aliens had expected a military response, but instead they got something much more dangerous: the truth. And now the entire galaxy knew exactly what kind of monsters they had been serving. The 10,000 ships that were heading toward Earth suddenly seemed less like a mighty armada and more like a desperate attempt to cover up centuries of lies and murder. The galaxy was watching, and everyone knew that whatever happened next, the aliens would never be able to claim they were the good guys ever again. The stage was set for the real battle to begin. The space between stars had always been empty and cold, but today it became a battlefield that would be remembered for thousands of years. The alien armada stretched across the darkness like a deadly constellation, each ship representing the pinnacle of their civilization's technology and power. There were crystal dreadnoughts from the Vex Empire that looked like floating cathedrals, made of diamond and light, each one the size of a small moon. The Nexus Collective had brought their cybernetic titans, massive ships that were part machine and part living metal, with weapons that could crack planets in half. The Void Lords contributed their energy wraiths, mysterious vessels that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, flickering in and out of reality like ghosts made of pure destruction. 10,000 ships in total, representing the combined might of 3 galactic empires, the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of known space. Their weapons could destroy solar systems. Their shields could withstand the explosion of dying stars. Their crews were the most experienced warriors in the galaxy, veterans of countless battles against species that had dared to challenge the established order. Against this overwhelming force stood a single human ship. The UES Retribution looked almost pathetic in comparison. It was sleek and black, about the size of one of the smaller alien cruisers. No massive crystal spires, no glowing energy fields, no reality-bending technology visible from the outside. To the aliens watching through their sensors, it looked like a primitive metal tube floating helplessly in space. Some of the younger alien officers actually laughed when they saw it on their screens. Weapons Officer Daiho Jin sat at his control station aboard the Retribution, his fingers dancing across panels that glowed with soft blue light. He had been preparing for this moment his entire life, training on simulators that had run through this exact scenario millions of times. Around him the bridge was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. No panic, no shouting, no dramatic speeches, just professional calm and deadly focus. "The enemy fleet is powering weapons," reported the tactical officer. "Range 50,000 kilometers and closing." Admiral Jiho Kim stood in the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had spent 5 centuries planning for this single battle. "Mr. Jin, are we ready?" Daiho's response was simple. "Yes, sir. Combat protocols are active. EGS is online. All systems are optimized for learning mode." Learning mode. That was the key to everything. The first alien salvo came like the wrath of angry gods. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. Crystal beams that could slice through asteroid belts, plasma cannons that burned hotter than stellar cores, energy projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire star systems. It should have vaporized the Retribution instantly, leaving nothing but scattered atoms floating in space. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ship absorbed every single blast. The energy weapons struck the Retribution's hull and simply disappeared like water soaking into sand. The plasma beams made contact and were somehow converted into power for the ship's own systems. Even the exotic dimensional attacks from the Void Lords were captured and processed by technology that shouldn't have existed. Commander Kalex of the Vex Empire watched his readings in disbelief. His crystal body began changing colors rapidly, cycling through shades that meant confusion and growing fear. "Impossible," he breathed, his voice carrying harmonics that made his bridge crew shiver. "Our most powerful weapons. They're making it stronger." The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the aliens could imagine. Humans had spent 500 years studying every piece of alien technology they could find. Every weapon, signature, every energy pattern, every exotic force that the galaxy's empires used. They had built the Retribution not just to fight these weapons, but to learn from them and adapt in real time. Admiral Jiho opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. His voice was calm, almost conversational. 5 centuries of practice. "Gentlemen, every shot you fire teaches us something new. Keep shooting, we're still learning." The battle that followed defied everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare. The Retribution didn't fight like other ships. It didn't try to outrun enemy fire or hide behind shields. Instead, it moved through the alien formation like a dancer performing a deadly ballet. When Vex crystal beams tried to slice it apart, the ship's hull shifted and adapted, becoming resistant to that specific frequency of energy. When Nexus plasma cannons opened fire, the Retribution's armor learned to absorb and redirect the thermal energy. But the most incredible thing was how the ship seemed to anticipate every attack before it happened. Daeho Jin watched his tactical displays in amazement as the ship's systems predicted enemy movements with perfect accuracy. A Void Lord energy wraith would begin charging its dimensional cannon, and the Retribution was already moving to the exact position where that attack would be most beneficial to absorb. "How is this possible?" asked his assistant, a young officer, who had never seen real combat before. Daeho smiled grimly. "We're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with the wisdom of everyone who ever gave their life to protect humanity." That was the secret the aliens couldn't understand. The Retribution wasn't just a ship operated by a crew. It was something unprecedented in galactic history. A vessel inhabited by the digital consciousness of humanity's greatest military minds. Every admiral who had ever lived, every tactical genius, every soldier who had learned something valuable about the art of war. Their knowledge, their experience, their instincts had all been preserved and combined into a collective intelligence that could process information faster than any biological brain. When the ship adapted to enemy weapons, it wasn't just following programmed responses. It was drawing on the experience of 10,000 battles, fought by 10,000 different commanders across human history. When it predicted enemy movements, it was using the intuition of warriors who had spent their lives studying how different species fought and thought. The aliens began to realize they weren't fighting a single ship. They were fighting the accumulated military wisdom of an entire species. As the battle continued, the Retribution's weapons came online. But these weren't just advanced versions of existing technology. They were weapons that learned and evolved, with each shot fired. The first human missile that struck a Vex dreadnought was powerful, but conventional. The second missile had analyzed the target's crystal structure and reconfigured itself to exploit weaknesses. The third missile could phase through the enemy's shields entirely. Within minutes, the alien formation began to break apart. Ships that had dominated battlefields for centuries found themselves helpless against an enemy that grew stronger with every exchange. The Retribution moved through their ranks like a shark through a school of fish, leaving destruction in its wake. But the most terrifying thing for the aliens wasn't the ship's power. It was the realization that humanity had been holding back. This wasn't humanity fighting at full strength. This was humanity playing with its food, learning and experimenting and enjoying the chance to finally show what 5 centuries of preparation could accomplish. Admiral Jiho's voice came over the communication channels again, still calm, still conversational. "We appreciate the training exercise, but we think we've learned enough for now. Would you like to discuss surrender terms, or shall we continue the lesson?" The alien fleet, which had arrived with such confidence, suddenly found itself facing an enemy that seemed to grow more dangerous with every passing second. And they were beginning to understand that this was just the beginning of humanity's return to the galaxy. The alien fleet was falling apart like a house of cards in a hurricane. Crystal dreadnoughts that had ruled the galaxy for centuries were spinning helplessly through space, their hulls cracked and their weapons systems failing. Cybernetic titans found their computer brains overloaded and confused, unable to process what they were seeing. Energy wraiths flickered in and out of reality, their mysterious technology useless against an enemy that seemed to exist beyond the normal laws of physics. But the strangest thing wasn't the destruction. It was the silence. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were watching the battle through emergency broadcasts. Every species that had ever feared the three great empires was glued to their screens, hardly daring to breathe. They had expected to watch humanity's final destruction. Instead, they were witnessing something that would change everything they thought they knew about life, death, and the nature of consciousness itself. Aegis began transmitting on every frequency, every channel, every communication network in known space. The broadcasts reached primitive worlds that barely had radio technology and advanced civilizations that communicated through quantum entanglement. Everyone heard the same message at the same time. Citizens of the galaxy, the artificial intelligence began, its voice somehow conveying both infinite compassion and terrible judgment. Today you witness not just a battle, but a revelation. For 5 centuries you have been told lies about the nature of this conflict. It is time you learned the truth about what humanity has become. The first image that appeared on screens across the galaxy was the face of Chief Engineer Yunji Nam. She looked exactly as she had 300 years ago when she was still alive. Young, brilliant, with eyes that sparkled with curiosity and determination. But there was something else in her expression now, something that hadn't been there when she was merely human. She possessed the kind of deep wisdom that only came from centuries of thought and experience. "My name is Yunji Nam," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the void of space. "I died in the year 2387, during the construction of the Retribution, a reactor malfunction. My body couldn't be saved, but my mind was preserved." The galaxy listened in stunned silence as she continued. "I volunteered to become part of something greater. Not just a ghost in a machine, but a living soul that could help protect humanity forever. I am one of 10,000. The scene shifted to show the interior of the Retribution, but not the physical corridors and chambers that the crew walked through. Instead, the broadcast revealed the ship's true nature, a vast digital space where 10,000 human consciousnesses existed in perfect harmony. They appeared as points of light, each one a complete human personality, with all their memories, emotions, and experiences intact. Admiral Ji-Ho Kim's voice joined the broadcast, speaking directly to the surviving alien commanders who were watching. Their fleets crumble around them. "We didn't just build artificial intelligence," he explained, his words carrying the weight of centuries of planning. "We became AI. Every human consciousness aboard this vessel chose to transcend death to protect our species and ensure that justice would be served." The revelation hit the galaxy like a shockwave. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was something that had never existed before in the known universe. A perfect fusion of biological consciousness and artificial intelligence. Humanity hadn't just survived their apparent defeat. They had evolved into something entirely new. Another voice joined the broadcast. Navigator Sung Bei had been a young officer when he died in a training accident 250 years ago. Now his consciousness spoke with the authority of someone who had spent centuries watching and learning and planning. "The alien empires thought they could wipe us out and pretend it never happened," he said. But they made a fundamental mistake. They didn't just attack humanity. They attacked the concept of justice itself. The broadcast showed more of the ship's digital interior, revealing the true source of the Retribution's incredible power. The 10,000 human minds weren't just passengers or crew members. They were the ship. Their combined consciousness formed a network more powerful than any computer ever built, more intuitive than any biological brain, more determined than any single individual could ever be. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "You see our ship absorbing your weapons," Admiral Ji-Ho continued, "and you think it's just advanced technology. But you're wrong. The Retribution isn't taking damage because damage is impossible when 10,000 minds share the burden. Every shot you fire, every blow you land, is absorbed and processed by 10,000 different perspectives. The truth was even more profound than the aliens could understand. The human consciousnesses aboard the ship weren't just working together. They had become something greater than the sum of their parts. When enemy fire struck the hull, it wasn't just absorbed by shields or armor. It was absorbed by 10,000 minds that transformed the energy of destruction into something positive. Pain became strength. Anger became focus. Grief became an unstoppable drive for justice. Chief Engineer Yunji Nam's image appeared again, and this time her expression was filled with a sadness that seemed to encompass centuries of sorrow. For 500 years, we have watched the galaxy through hidden sensors and secret networks. We have seen the alien empires continue their work of destruction. 17 more species wiped out, hundreds of worlds stripped bare, millions of innocent beings murdered in the name of galactic stability. Her voice grew stronger, filled with righteous anger that spoke for every human who had ever been wronged. Each new atrocity fueled our determination. Each innocent life lost added to our collective grief and our shared resolve. You didn't just kill our bodies during the war. You created something far more dangerous. 10,000 souls united by a common purpose. Navigator Seungbei's consciousness manifested again, his digital form somehow conveying both the innocence of his youth and the wisdom of his centuries-long existence. "We are not ghosts haunting a machine," he said. "We are the living embodiment of humanity's promise to never let injustice go unanswered. Every calculation our ship makes, every tactical decision, every adaptation to your weapons, it all comes from the combined experience and intuition of 10,000 human minds working as one." The alien commanders watching the broadcast began to understand the true horror of their situation. They weren't fighting a ship or even an artificial intelligence. They were fighting the digitized souls of humanity's greatest heroes, warriors, and thinkers, all united by centuries of grief and an unbreakable commitment to justice. The battle around them had become something beyond their comprehension. The retribution moved through space like a living thing, guided by the collective will of 10,000 minds that had spent 5 centuries planning this moment. Every shot fired at the ship made it stronger because it was absorbed not just by technology, but by the unbreakable spirit of people who had chosen to sacrifice their normal existence to protect everything they loved. "I want to know why we didn't reveal ourselves sooner," Admiral Jiho asked, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who spoke for an entire species. "Because we needed to be certain that when we returned, we would have the power to ensure that the galaxy's age of tyranny would end forever." The broadcast continued, showing the galaxy that the age of the great alien empires was coming to an end, not through conquest or revenge, but through the determination of a species that had transformed death itself into a weapon for justice. The silence that followed the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Where once 10,000 alien warships had dominated the void, now only scattered debris floated through space like the remains of broken dreams. The few surviving vessels hung motionless, their crews too stunned to move, too terrified to run, and too proud to surrender easily. But surrender was exactly what they were about to do. Commander Kalex of the Vex Empire found himself staring at his command screens in disbelief. His mighty crystal dreadnought, which had never known defeat in 3 centuries of warfare, was now barely functional. Half his weapons were offline, his shields were flickering, and his crystal hull showed stress fractures that would take months to repair. Around him, his bridge crew sat in stunned silence, their normally harmonious songs replaced by discordant whispers of fear and confusion. The Nexus Collective's High Admiral Zenth faced similar devastation. His cybernetic brain, which could process billions of calculations per second, was struggling to comprehend what had just happened. His fleet of mechanical titans had been reduced to floating scrap metal. Worse still, the human ship had somehow infected his computer systems with viruses that made his machines feel something impossible for artificial beings: shame. The Void Lords had simply vanished, retreating to whatever dimensional hiding places they called home. Their energy wraiths had been not just defeated but embarrassed, their mysterious powers useless against an enemy that seemed to exist beyond normal reality. It was into this defeated silence that Diplomatic Officer Yuna O began to speak. Her holographic form appeared simultaneously on every surviving alien ship, in every alien government building, on every inhabited world throughout the galaxy. Unlike the battle-hardened faces of Admiral Jiho or the ghostly presence of the ship's digital crew, Yuna looked like what she was, a diplomat trained in the delicate art of negotiation. But there was steel beneath her polite smile, and her words carried the weight of 10,000 human souls backing every syllable. "Greetings," she began, her voice carrying clearly across space. "I am Diplomatic Officer Yuna O, speaking on behalf of humanity and our digital companions. Today's demonstration of power was not intended as conquest, but as proof of our capabilities. Now we offer you something your species have never truly understood: a choice." The aliens listening felt a chill run through their various forms of consciousness. They had expected demands for surrender, perhaps terms of vassalage or slavery. They had prepared for the usual aftermath of military defeat. What they weren't prepared for was what came next. "You have committed crimes against sentient life on a scale that defies comprehension," Yuna continued, her tone remaining perfectly diplomatic, even as she listed atrocities that made entire civilizations weep. 17 species completely exterminated, hundreds of worlds stripped of all life, billions of innocent beings murdered for the crime of existing in your way. These are not the actions of civilized governments. They are the work of cosmic criminals. Commander Kalex tried to interrupt, his crystal voice rising in harmonics of protest. "We were maintaining galactic order. Those species were dangerous. They threatened the stability of silence." The word came not from Yuna, but from Aegis itself, and it carried such finality that every alien in the galaxy felt their voices catch in their throats. "You will speak when given permission. For 5 centuries you have had your say. Now it is time to listen." Yuna continued as if the interruption had never happened. "Humanity offers you redemption through service or obliteration through justice. The choice is entirely yours, and it is a choice we will honor regardless of our personal feelings about your worthiness to continue existing." The terms she presented were unlike anything in galactic history. Not conquest, not slavery, not even traditional punishment, something far more sophisticated and in its own way more terrifying. Option 1, total annihilation. "We possess the power to end your civilizations completely. Every world, every ship, every trace of your existence removed from the universe, clean, quick, final. You will join the 17 species you murdered, and the galaxy will be free of your influence forever." The aliens listening felt their various forms of fear response activate. For crystalline beings like the Vex, this meant their bodies cycling through colors of terror. For cybernetic entities like the Nexus, it meant error messages cascading through their consciousness. For the few Void Lords still monitoring the transmission, it meant a psychic scream of pure horror echoing through dimensions. "Option 2, Yuna continued, her voice taking on a tone that somehow managed to be both merciful and absolutely terrifying. "Redemption through service. You will spend the next 1,000 years rebuilding what you destroyed. Every species you genocided will be resurrected using genetic samples we have preserved. Every world you stripped bare will be restored to its original state. Every civilization you crushed will be rebuilt under human supervision." The scope of what she was describing was staggering. Bringing back extinct species was theoretically possible with advanced genetic technology, but doing it on the scale she described would require resources and dedication beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. It would mean transforming the 3 great empires from conquerors into gardeners, from destroyers into creators. "You will work under the guidance of human overseers," she explained, "not as slaves, but as students learning to undo the damage you have caused. Your scientists will develop new ways to restore dead worlds. Your engineers will build habitats for resurrected species. Your leaders will learn to govern with compassion instead of fear." But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "Admiral," Jiho's voice joined the transmission, and with it came images that made the entire galaxy gasp in amazement. 12 more ships identical to the Retribution appeared on screens throughout known space. They had been hiding in the shadows of dead systems, in the spaces between stars, in dimensions just outside normal reality. The retribution was never alone, the Admiral explained. For 5 centuries, 12 Guardian ships have been stationed throughout the galaxy. Each one carries 10,000 human consciousnesses. Each one has been watching, recording, preparing. They have witnessed every crime, documented every atrocity, and waited for this moment to reveal themselves. The implications hit the alien. Leaders like physical blows. Humanity hadn't just survived and returned. They had been watching everything, every secret meeting, every hidden genocide, every private moment when the alien empires thought they were safe from observation. Nothing had been hidden from human eyes. Navigator Xungbei's digital consciousness appeared one final time, his young face carrying the wisdom of centuries. "You thought you were the masters of the galaxy," he said, "but you were never more than children playing with weapons too dangerous for you to understand. Today the adults have returned to clean up your mess." The final choice was presented with crystalline clarity: redemption through 1,000 years of service, learning to create instead of destroy, healing instead of harming, or annihilation, so complete that future historians would struggle to remember that their species had ever existed. One by one, the alien leaders made their choice. Commander Kalex was the first, his crystal body flashing through colors of shame and acceptance as he transmitted his empire's surrender. High Admiral Zenth followed, his cybernetic logic concluding that redemption was preferable to extinction. Even the Void Lords emerged from their dimensional hiding places to acknowledge humanity's authority. Admiral Jiho's final transmission echoed across every inhabited world, carried by technology that ensured every sentient being in the galaxy heard his words clearly. "Let it be known throughout the stars that Earth did not come to conquer, we came to liberate. When you wrong the innocent, when you destroy the helpless, when you commit genocide in the name of order, you don't face justice through courts or treaties. You face humanity, and humanity never forgets. Humanity never forgives, but humanity always offers redemption to those willing to earn it." The galaxy's new age began not with the roar of conquest, but with the quiet dignity of a species that had learned to transform their greatest pain into the universe's greatest protection. The age of the great alien empires was over. The age of human guardianship had begun, and across 1,000 worlds, the work of resurrection and restoration commenced, supervised by beings who had chosen to become something more than human in order to ensure that justice would never again be denied to the innocent.